Welcome to Intimate Fame, conversations with the famous and infamous like you have never heard. Success, love, history alive, history undressed, private lives intimately revealed. What if you were there? Now you are invited. Meet extraordinary people as you never have before. One-person stories like no conversation you have ever been part of. Tonight, the final episode, That Woman, Wallis Simpson, Duchess of Windsor. Before Diana, before Meghan, there was the world's most famous royal outcast. That woman, Wallis Simpson, Duchess of Windsor. Episode 3. She won a king's heart in the 40-year romance known around the world as the love story of the 20th century. In December 1936, King Edward VIII abdicated his throne for the twice-divorced American Wallis Simpson. Despite being vilified by the royal family and branded as an adventuress and the king's whore, she became an unlikely but potent global symbol of female empowerment and a worldwide social icon. But even with all that has been written about her, Wallis remained an enigma. Until now. Paris, 1973, the Windsor Villa. 1 year after the death of her husband, Edward VIII, Wallis Simpson is hosting one of her famous cocktail parties. The evening is in full swing.
Yes, let's talk Hitler. You did not think I'd bring him up at my own party, did you? God, the press and the gossip. And the royals. 2 years before the war, David and I found ourselves in front of and photographed with the most vile, hideous creature that ever walked the earth. It was 1937, mid-October. No one, including David's brother the king, let alone a president of the United States, no one thought war with Germany was coming. It was Russia. Russia was going to kill us all. David wanted to visit Germany. Germany was doing remarkable things for the housing of workers, something that could be expanded all over the world. David was fascinated and wanted to go and see it firsthand. Germany was his mother's heritage, lifeblood. David was taught by Queen Mary to speak German. The royal residence, Hanoverian portraits everywhere. 2 years before the war, the British government was sending diplomats not just to Berlin, but to Berchtesgaden, Hitler's home. I had no idea. No one had any idea of what this madman would do. But even then, I thought the press around our trip smelled rancid. Despite dispatching British emissaries to meet Hitler at the exact time we were to arrive, I knew the royal family would turn this on us. We walked into a trap. There was no plan to meet with Hitler. David thought it all about worker conditions. Early on, we realized it was all but a publicity stunt. But there we were. If the king had instructed the British embassy in Germany to coordinate for us the visit, perhaps things would have gone differently. But the king had no intention of making things go differently. We were private citizens as far as the royals were concerned. We had no agenda, no political presentation. But we were private citizens who can show up on the front pages of every international magazine. With Hitler. We met with Field Marshal Goering and his wife Emmy. On a tour of his home, in his library, David grabbed me, fiercely pulling me aside. There was a map over the fireplace. On Goering's map, Germany and Austria were one. Out of nowhere, David, pointing at the map, blurted out, "That's rather important." Goering thought it fine, there was no fuss. David looked Goering right in the eyes and told him, never, never, never. October 22nd. Nothing eventful was planned. Then, an invitation from Adolf Hitler. British tea at Berchtesgaden. Yes. Along with being the woman who appeared in Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, L'Officiel countless times, named one of the top 10 best-dressed women in the world, a distinction I held nearly 4 decades, unmatched to this day, dressed by Dior, Van Cleef, Alexandra, Cartier. Yes, I received an invitation to tea with Adolf Hitler. I said but a few words to the creature, David little more. But one single photograph with Adolf Hitler. We were crucified. 3 days earlier, the British Foreign Secretary met Hitler on behalf of the British government to speak the word no one will speak. Those photos, the British Foreign Secretary meeting with Hitler, magically disappeared. The British Foreign Secretary met not just in Berlin, but went to Hitler's home. And it would not be the last of the political visits the royals sent, visits far more sinister than our photo op. But the only photos ever seen, Edward and Wallis, and Hitler. Yes, we shook his hand. But it was the king who sent Chamberlain to talk appeasement. I will give you this. I will take the hit. You could call us carefree, foolish at times. But we were not traitors. The royals had blundered badly with Chamberlain, and there we were, the Duke and Duchess to trash. The press poisoned us. They gave the king exactly what he wanted, more reason to vilify and distance himself from his own brother. The German fiasco gave the king cover. Hitler. We barely spoke. I do remember complimenting him on his architecture and buildings, to which Hitler replied, "Our buildings will make more magnificent ruins than the Greeks." The war did come, and it brought us back to England. David was offered posts, but we would have no royal residence. All requests denied. No quarters, no car, nothing. David was offered 2 positions, Wales and France. Then Bertie reneged on Wales, seeing how popular his brother's return was. I must tell you what they did with David. When World War II came, this man, with his unparalleled knowledge, trained in affairs of state, was put out of harm's way with an appointment of little consequence, the governorship of the Bahamas. The Bahamas had a majority black population, terribly poor, uneducated, ill-treated by the British. I'm quite sure the reason we were sent there was we would hopefully die in a well-deserved uprising. On top of everything, we arrived to learn, once again, word had already come from the king. Since I was not bestowed Her Royal Highness, there should be no curtsy, no formal kindness shown me. Our home in the Bahamas looked beautiful, from a half-mile away. Truth be told, it was in complete ruins, holes in walls where windows should be. A goat living in our bedroom. We were there but a week and the ceiling fell in, right next to me. I was sitting in this very chair I am sitting in now. I've kept it as a reminder of the crap that can land on your head. In the fall, a grand tour was arranged, my return to America. We had a private train and a baggage car, well, cars, to hold our 146 pieces of luggage. It was a grand tour. We were to visit not only the President and the White House, but Baltimore. Some 200,000 lined the streets. For Wallis, no ball, no future, not pretty. Wallis with all the proper young female deportment who had become inappropriate. My home had been turned into a museum. People would jump into the bathtub for good luck. I was now the famous daughter. New York City, Chicago, Canada. The war ended. After 4.5 years, we left the Bahamas with nowhere to go. We became vagabonds. Monte Carlo, Portofino, New York, Palm Beach, hotel to hotel, mansion to mansion, ship to ship. Word came that Wynne had died. He wanted more than anything to die in war. The Navy, however, did find a way to kill him. Stuck in San Diego, an alcoholic, a bitter retired commander leaving behind a fourth wife. Yes, 3 more after me. Ripped and torn, Win, dead at 61. No matter where we would hide, the royal insults followed. Princess Elizabeth and Philip announced their marriage, not invited. The Queen refused to attend her own daughter's wedding if we attended. That is how much they hated us. Princess Margaret's wedding, not invited. Edward, Duke of Kent, not invited. Princess Alexandra, not invited. In the program, I was the only one not included in the royal family tree. David sailed to England for his mother's 80th birthday, only to learn he had not been invited. This is the madness we lived with. They thought it their way to slowly kill us, since Churchill had obviously informed them they simply could not do it outright. It suddenly became clear to me how ridiculous it is to go behind a family-designed, government-manufactured curtain of asbestos that protects the British Commonwealth from dangerous us. The king died. Cancer. A chain smoker all his life, smoked like David. But as far as the Queen and the Queen Mother were concerned, it wasn't cancer that killed Bertie. It was me. Becoming king had killed Bertie, and he never would have become king had I not stolen David. David asked the new queen to recognize me, grant me her royal highness. Well, no such luck. He was told it was in memory of her father. He would not grant it, therefore she could not grant it. The well was poisoned. The abuse David endured. I knew quite a bit about abuse. I thought I could save him, protect him. Queen Mary died, and I cried on the news. Yes, me. I cried for the woman who had tortured her son ruthlessly, relentlessly, endlessly. I will tell you a secret few know. I have kept a small photograph of Queen Mary on my bedside table to this day. Why keep a photo and cry about the news of this vicious, insensitive woman's death? I knew how much David had loved his mother and wanted to make amends. Amends that were never to be. David, let alone me, not invited to the coronation of Elizabeth II. We truly did believe things would improve with Elizabeth, but that was not to be. The palace announced the selling of the fort and that David would not be allowed to buy it. This was a declaration to David that there was no chance left of ever returning to England. Once again, France, Paris, 4 Rue du Champ d'Entremont. Here, for the first time in our life, we lived not as Duke and Duchess, but husband and wife. My husband gave up everything for me. This bracelet on my wrist was a gift from David, an expression of the romance of our life. It has always been my favorite. 9 crosses of aquamarine, amethyst, emeralds, baguette diamonds, rubies, yellow sapphires, blue sapphires, and platinum. On the back of each cross, a cherished date in our romance. We came to London once more. David needed eye surgery. A complete and utter disaster for the royals and the press. Former king and his old wife, a blind old man and the woman he had been married to for more than 30 years, wobble into a hotel, cameras flashing. Buckingham Palace, no rooms. In the weeks we were in London, Queen Elizabeth visited twice. Poor David practically had to beg her. David asked to visit the palace and walk the gardens. She agreed, but stipulated a valet would be permitted, but not me. David had one more question, not believing that even in death they would grant him anything. While in Baltimore, David had purchased burial plots in Greenmount Cemetery where my relatives were buried. David asked if we might have permission to have our funeral services in St. George's Chapel and be buried in the royal family's private burial plot in Frogmore Gardens. Queen Elizabeth said she would look into it. The Queen hated the idea of me being so close to Windsor Castle, but a former king buried in Baltimore? Ha! Death. Ernest died. Cancer. He married Mary Kirk. They had a son. He and Mary only had 5 years together. He lost her to cancer as well. Cancer, cancer, cancer. Cancer. Death. I told David to stop smoking all those cigarettes. He began to lose his voice. There was a tumor, and it was inoperable. Under French medical ethics, the doctors were unable to tell David it was terminal. But he knew. I think we both knew the other knew. How strange it was trying to fool ourselves to save the other from suffering. When David died, it was peaceful. 2:20 a.m. I laid on the bed holding him. My stay at Buckingham Palace for the funeral was a cold affair. Arriving, my car was ordered to drop me at a service entrance. No one from the royal family greeted me. They were going to continue to hate me no matter what I did. I wasn't going to let them see David's wife without every shred of dignity I could muster. I maintained the same expression they all bore, they who did not care. 60,000 paid their respects. The royal family dissected me. When would I return David's papers, the royal gifts? When would I return to America to live, as if I had been there the last 40 years? David's resting place at Frogmore was under beautiful trees, but next to a hedge. A hedge. I stood with the Archbishop, contemplating the spot. It was far too small to accommodate David and myself. The royal family had picked a plot that, to fit next to David, would require me buried tilted sideways. I mentioned to the Archbishop, I realize I am a very thin woman, but I do not think even I can fit into that miserable little narrow piece of ground. The Archbishop said to me, mind you, he told me literally as we were burying my dear David, not to worry, you'll fit. I told him the damn hedge needed to be moved to make room for me. Yes, at David's burial, I was fighting for my place next to him. I decided to leave as soon as David was buried. I needed Paris more than ever. No one from the royal family traveled with me to the airport. I walked the tarmac up the stairs with no assistance, a widow in her 70s, never looking back. By early evening, I had returned to 4 Route du Champ d'Entremont. I was home. No one but myself and David's ghost. Everything here is just as David left it. Nothing changed or removed. The novel he was reading, his brandy glass half empty. David thought it imprudent to finish the last cocktail of the night. Nothing should be so desperate. Every night before retiring, I enter David's room to whisper, "Good night, David." A few friends, a few employees. I have no one in America. It has been far too long, the distance too great. I am alone. Earlier this year, the Queen did send a plane for me. I was taken to Frogmore to visit David's grave. The Portland stone slab was in place. I joined the Queen for tea at Windsor Castle. I returned to Paris that afternoon. The press was never informed of this visit. Do you have any idea how hard it is to live out a great romance? I've been pretty flattened out by the world in general. That Saturday in August 1997, it was Diana's second visit. A month earlier, Diana and Dodi visited 4 Rue du Champ d'Entremont. After my death, the Windsor villa sadly and slowly fell into disrepair. For reasons unknown, Dodi's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, had spared no expense in recreating our villa to the splendor it had been. Diana fell in love with it. By the time Diana and Dodi arrived a month later in August 1997, our beautifully recreated villa was but a tomb, emptied of every chair, rug, silverware, drapery, all mementos, gone. Chilling as it was, Diana still wanted our villa. She knew, even without our trappings, it was to be her sanctuary, one she desperately needed. The reason for our villa becoming a tomb? In the month between Diana's first visit and the second, Dodi's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, and Sotheby's auction house had orchestrated a raid to pillage our home of every last bit of breath from the Duke and Duchess of Windsor's existence. The sole purpose of this, I doubt, was monetary gain. Mohammed Al-Fayed could spend more in a day than what our mementos could coffer up. The purpose was to make damn well sure that the memory of Edward and Wallis was spread to the 4 corners of the world, owned by the rich and famous. There would be no royal collection, no royal preservation, better, no royal interpretation. Despite his great wealth and power, Mohammed Al-Fayed had been treated much like Diana, myself, and so many others that the royals simply wanted to ostracize. Our lives were secretly warehoused. A Sotheby's auction in New York City was set for September 1997. The Sotheby's auction did not occur because Diana and Dodi were dead. But early in the new year, an auction did occur. Our private life was ripped apart and sold. If David and I had not already been dead, it would have certainly killed us. Baby portrait of David. Sold. $25,000. My blue velvet Christian Dior Lahore evening gown. Sold. $26,450. The morning suit David wore at his wedding. Sold. $27,000. The red leather dispatch box emblazoned with the king. Sold. $65,000. The Gerald Brockhurst painting of me, purchased by the National Portrait Gallery. Sold. $100,000. Cecil Beaton's 2 sketches of me, they hung in our bathroom. Sold. $310,000. David's abdication desk. Sold. $415,000. The greatest yard sale ever. I do not know Mohammed Al-Fayed's reasoning. It clearly was a decision made weeks before the death of his son and Diana. But it damn well looks like one of the greatest screw-you moments to the royal family. Mohammed Al-Fayed did not know his son would be dead. But he did know the royals. He took everything the royal family wanted desperately to put in a vault, never to be remembered. David's life, my life. The royals wanted it vanished, never imagined. Instead, Mohammed Al-Fayed scattered the mementos of our life to the 4 corners of the world. Distant, glimmering stars. The royals should thank Mohammed Al-Fayed that there is no royal accounting of the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. But then again, there is the distant glimmer of stars. That woman. The Queen's name for me. As if she could not find the word for the anarchy befallen royalty. Woman. Not whore, not bitch, not... well, you know the other words they have called us when they could not kill us. Wallis Simpson, world's most famous royal outcast. I'm sure there will be others. You have all been simply divine. This evening has been divine. David would have so loved this. Around the time of our 30th anniversary, a magazine asked David and me, what makes a happy marriage? As if we would have the best advice for anyone. David replied, step out to an occasional nightclub with your wife. This will make her feel that whatever pleasures you used to have in such frivolities were incomplete until you met her. Always praise the way she wears her hair. If possible, like it. She will wear it that way anyway. And my response to the reporters, be first to decide any question, no matter how trivial, but suggest that all decisions be mutual. Make him think this love, the only real one in your life, will last forever. By the way, when the Queen sent the plane for me, and I was taken to Frogmore to visit David's grave with a Portland stone slab in place, they moved the fucking hedge.
This is Scott Edward Smith, the creator of Intimate Fame. Thank you for listening. Produced by Howard Gluss. That Woman, written by Scott Edward Smith, performed by Melissa Jobe. Sound design and original music by Chesney Hawkes. Associate producer, Melissa Jobe. Original stage production performed at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. Performed by Melissa Jobe. Directed by Philip William McKinley. Produced by Howard Gluss and Sharon Morrill.